Hello, and hello. Faithful journeymen, searchers of the truth, behold. I've been hinting at this one for a minute. I have an adverse reaction to clickbait, the hyping up of things to try to build unnecessary attention. Followers of this channel will probably understand that. In fact, a strategy I seem to employ is click deterrence with boring titles that fail to draw anyone in. In a way, it kind of gatekeeps. This one's taken me a minute, and I have immersed myself in documents incredulously, and I kind of got in too deep. My head was spinning, and I don't even know where to begin. So the rabbit hole is so big, the lake is so large that I decided to back up and walk along with you through the process so that we can learn together. And you can see the triggering thoughts and the resulting avalanche that follows, perhaps sharing some of the incredulity with me. We all have our own blind spots and our own cognitive dissonance and our own biases. And I seem to have no problem dissecting and destroying narratives from modern times or even 1800s and early 1900s. I seem to have no problem dismantling that history without protest. But perhaps due to a hallowed sort of respect at my immediate forebears, I have avoided looking with the same scrutiny at some of our more recent history. By that I mean past 100, pertaining to the world wars and things like that. Now, full disclosure, before I piss just about everybody off, let me state the obvious first. I may be very late to the table on this. This might not be exciting to anyone. You might be, nadoy, we been know this. To me, I thought it was shocking and compelling, and so I'm presenting it to you in such a way that you can see my outrage unraveling. This is going to be a multi-part series, and in this one, I'm really only going to deal with the photographs. An important part, but not the whole. The narrative and the stories behind the photographs are of equal value, but this is what lured me in. And for full transparency, I have, family members, though not by blood, relations that have built a full-time career, their entire life in the Air Force and in the armed services, rising up to the ranks of colonel. And some part of me feels an inner fist shaking, saying, "You bastard, how dare you discredit the heroes of our past." But I personally prefer to the truth. Let the chips fall where they lie. There's a couple things that I want to say that are obvious probably going into this, but I'll say them nonetheless. And one is that soldiers follow orders. In fact, a good soldier follows orders. Isn't that what we're told? Even if it's a lie, you're told to say this. So if someone is lying because they're following orders because of what they believe to be a higher power, it doesn't necessarily make them accomplice the evil, wittingly at least. It doesn't make them a bad soldier. It doesn't make them a bad person. In fact, a lot of things are done out of duty or what people believe to be their duty, which is why I think in the wrong hands it can be a dangerous tool. Now, I have members of my immediate family. Well, I have a large extended family, and outside of one or two extremely talented, remarkable nephews, most of my family pay no attention to this channel or have no interest in it. But if they did, I'm sure I'd offend them as well. So I'm not coming from a place of just sneering and pooping all over your legacy. This is just the truth as it appears to me, or a distortion. Now, this all may seem very obvious, but I still want to preface this because I know I'm going to undoubtedly piss people off who are saying, "How dare you insult the hero that my grandfather was?" And I have no intention of insulting your grandfather, all of our grandfathers, as well as we deserve the truth as much as anyone. And I don't judge anyone who acts in ignorance or who acts unwittingly as part of this plot. But there are some who have to know the truth. That is up for you to decide, you, my absolute beloved viewer, casual observer, whoever you may be. Now, many times when I present things in life or just in conversation, in disbelief is saying, "Well, I don't believe that happened." I'm often have this thrown back at me like, "Prove that it didn't happen. Prove it. Prove it didn't happen." And I don't think that's a fair request based on the way we normally do things. For example, if I were to stroll down to my local precinct and declare boldly, kick open the door and say, "Nyahaha, I, sirs, am a mastermind serial killer. I've slain dozens, and their bodies are cast into the river, and I'm turning myself in." Well, they could hold me, no doubt initiate a strong, staunch, heavy-handed investigation, but if they can't find the body, they can't charge me. Not with murder, anyway. I guess this is maybe a bad analogy, but the point is that the onus isn't to prove that something didn't happen, it's to prove that it did happen. Now, apply this, not to crime, apply this to, say, your cousin or whoever, some colleague telling you some story you don't believe. Let's say I said, "Hey, man, one time I met Harrison Ford, and we played patty cake while water rafting down the river, and we seen Big Bird on the shore, and he gave us the middle finger." Whatever, come up with a fantasy story you want. It was a terrible one. And you'd say, "Prove it. Got any pics to Harrison? You got receipts of the whitewater raft?" No. And I say, "No, you prove it didn't happen." Now, these are ridiculous analogies, but the point is that we often get that confused with history, where it's like, it's in the books, you prove it didn't happen. And I say to thee, No, it's up to you, the historian, it's up to the narrative teller to prove it did happen. And the problems that I find are when they fail to prove it did happen, that's when we have an issue. Now, what we're talking about here mainly, problem with history on its whole. Today, we're looking through the lens of Japanese wars, as far as the later ones. Later meaning post-photography. Did these wars happen? Well, I don't know. It's not up to me to prove they didn't happen. It's up to the easily provable record that it did happen, right? I mean, if there were wars involving tens of thousands of deaths and casualties and multiple nations, cameras galore, press outfits, shouldn't be difficult, right? So when it is, what does that mean? And again, that is for you, my beloveds, to decide. So how did this begin? I know very little about Japanese history, well, at least did before the start of this, and I've immersed myself in it, and I still feel like I know very little, but I'm finding my way. As usual, it's a tricky affair, full of many unexpected twists and turns, and much of it unprovable, until we get to the area of photography. Now, I will tell you how this came about, and really it was a series of events that mean nothing in a vacuum. One was just an innocuous comment by Tucker Carlson, whom I rarely listen to, and I wasn't even listening to in this case, but it was an offhand comment he made about visiting Tokyo, and he said, this is what it looks like when you lose a war, because it was beautiful and the city was thriving and industries were great and homelessness, and it was obviously more of a knock on our current third world appearing inner city. But for some reason it rang a bell with me because I had thought about the same thing when I contemplate things like the G7 and how Japan's always in this inner circle and how they're almost a vassal state along with Europe in a pathetic way to anything that the United States war machine decides, Japan just signs on for. Even though it seems completely against their self-interest, it seems they're just a vassal. And the fact that we have a military presence so strong and similar to Germany, where they almost seem like shells of their former self, as long as the industries are good and the rich keep getting richer and the population is kept in a state of docility and they go along with American foreign interests, then they're protected, no problem. Which is weird because what we're told about Japan and Germany are they're these barbaric Huns and the Japanese are monsters who will rape entire cities in case of Nanking and they will fight to the little death. Their mothers would give them knives with which to fall upon rather than fall into the hands of the enemy. They believe the emperor is a god and they will, to the last man, woman, and child, never surrender. And it took 2 atomic bombs to render them into a state of submission, and then all is well. Always kind of a puzzling narrative because when I meet Japanese people, everything I know of Japanese people, they're intense. Seems like when it comes to principles and honor and things they staunchly believe in, they're intense. And that's not a criticism. They seem to be devoted family. Their divorce rates and the number of intact families seem high. They adhere to principles. They seem, for the most part, I know I'm generalizing, there's evil potatoes in every batch, but for the most part, they seem like a gentle, artistic, shy, socially often even awkward in their sweet shyness, creative, quiet kind of people. That doesn't really match this sword-wielding, suicidal, kamikaze fight to the last man legend that we're told. And I'd say the same thing for just about every people who are villainized. Modern-day Russia and China, and in the 40s, Germans, who largely, though we're told of these massive, insane stories of atrocities, which may or may not have happened, I don't know. I just mean it doesn't fit in with the normal. The average German that you meet is simply not a genocidal rapist. And hey, maybe I've just met the wrong people. Completely possible. I plead ignorance in a lot of ways, but from my perspective, it gives the faint whiff of propaganda, as if we have to assign atrocities to certain people in order to justify control over their industry, which clearly we have done in the case of Germany and Japan, we meaning the American globalist, London-financed war machine. Now, all that long-windedness aside, I wasn't questioning much of this. Sure, details are embellished, and sure, there's propaganda in wartime. Sure, when you're dealing with crooks like Winston Churchill and FDR, who I believe to be some of the most villainous men of our time, our meaning that time, you allow for some of that. Certain. I've seen the InfoWars documentaries on the way that Japan was baited into Pearl Harbor. It wasn't some surprise attack, and it wasn't unexpected, and it was used as an excuse to enter the war. And I've granted that there's probably some truth to that. Now, this episode is going to be primarily dealing with the photographs, like I said, not so much the narrative. So we're going to ignore a lot of that. That's just the context for which the mental frame, flawed as it may be, that I'm holding as I enter this investigation through my own vision as I approach this investigation, how I got drawn in. We're going to walk through and see how this happened. This begins a few years ago. I made a video exposing what I thought exposing some of the weird, blatant abnormalities in the Civil War footage. And now a line stands out to me. Sometimes I have an airtight memory of certain phrases, like we all do, captions, but though I couldn't place where it came from. And primarily that series dealt with a 10-part book called The Photographical History and Evidence evidence, basically, of the Civil War, and that was the definitive model. And now nothing else. This here alone stood with, and the subsequent failings of that text to live up to that claim. How piss poor the photography was compared to captions. Well, somewhere in one of the prologues of one of those 10 volumes, there was a line that dealt with the Japanese-Russian War, the Russo-Japanese War that happened around the same. And it said, despite the profundity of amazing photographers, that war too, its photography fell short of what you're about to see in these books about Civil War. I made a mental note, that seems a red flag to me. When you say, despite the abundance of amazing photography, they failed to capture any good photos. That to me sounds like weird narrative goofiness. So a few years ago, I made a note to self. It had been on the back burner, as many of the projects that I want to undertake are, until Mr. Tucker Carlson made that little innocuous statement. And at the same time, maybe a day earlier, I was casually traipsing through my vast digital library, and I came across a book entitled, which I'd had for years. So the slideshow that you have been patiently viewing during my lengthy preamble is contextually not important as far as the subject matter. In fact, the only reason that particular collection of photos was being played was because, not of the content, but the quality. This isn't the 1860s anymore. These photographs are from the 1930s, and as you can tell, if you've been noticing, the clarity is great. The resolution's fine. Whether they're parades or action shots or still frames, there's no blurring. There's very little questionable blurs other than some of the actual smudges and things that on the prints themselves, damage to the photograph themselves. So the quality of photography has drastically improved since the 1860s. So you would imagine then that things tend to progress, that the photography 10, 15 years after this would be at least on par with that. Which leads me to the United States official pictorial record of the war against Japan, as aforementioned. And this is an official publication. This claims to be the quintessential, detailed historical account based on photography. And it's a 500-page book, so there's plenty of text as well, however. We're only going to focus on the pictures today, because that's a bold statement here, the pictorial record. And naturally, if you're going to publish something like this, with all the full backing of the United States Department of Defense funding, you would want to lead with your best foot forward. And so the cover, presumably to lure you in, is this picture here. Now, I don't know what's going on here, but it appears to me that this guy in the foreground, what is a dress on? Well, regardless of that, it seems clearly sort of just inserted in, like cut and pasted in. And then you have these guys so crappily plugged in, and in fact, almost looks like the same picture, just like they flipped the torso, like they flipped the image, made it smaller and stuck him here. I don't know, but they both have this mysterious missing arm and rest of body. I'm sure the camouflage is that good. And this is a terrible picture. I'm not sure why we would even lead with this, because it looks so obviously fake. So that's troubling, and this is what kind of piqued my curiosity. So narrative aside, as we start to stroll through here, we are hit with the same kind of language here as we are hit during the photographic history of the Civil War. A very wordy, an appreciation of the terrain will be found within. The careful study of the pictures herein presented will show the capabilities and limitations, and these factors are essential to a clear understanding of military history, and it just kind of has the same sort of tone about the photographs being especially selected to show all matters of human interest regarding this conflict. Oh, goody. So let's see. So I should just be able to sort of scan this, and again, narrative aside, we'll get to that on a later episode, but we are shown pictures which detail what's going on here. Some of them are just straight goofy. I mean, I guess that can be explained some ways, and some of them are just terrible, like this here, where apparently they're training. I mean, I guess so. This guy's chin strap is not exactly where it should be, I don't think. A little casual for loading this sort of weapon, but okay. Suppose this is happening. Suppose these are pictures of men training. You don't have too much reason to presume otherwise, other than this doesn't really show a war, now does it? I mean, show some guys sort of loafing around, showcasing the weaponry. This one looks a little funny, with the plane almost looking like sort of inserted here. But I'm being nitpicky. And here we get to an image of Pearl Harbor. And I don't know, this guy casually strolling along with what looks like a napkin bib on or something. And none of these guys, despite it being a still frame, of course, they don't really show any urgency, considering this is a surprise attack with these massive explosions in the background, which kind of look fake to me. I don't know. This ship looks a little close to this hangar here. This is allegedly the destroyer exploding. This one, I don't know what to make of this. It just seems to be fakery. Like, I don't really understand the water line. I don't really understand this massive cloud of smoke back here. Here's one that just looks like a mess. I'm not even sure how this sharply divided line, is this supposed to be a sinking ship. I don't think that's how that looks. Not to mention these guys here seem entirely out of scale with these guys over here. And we see some wrecked planes. Looks just like rubble. Then you get to this one, which is a Japanese midget submarine, which ran aground early in the morning of December 7th. So somehow we're finding this submarine, which in the morning of the attack, which I don't know, wouldn't that sort of tip you off? But regardless, what is this? Are they pulling it to shore with ropes? And this just looks pasted in to me. It just not, does that look real to anyone else? I mean, I don't know if I'm missing something here. Here's a real good one where we're a destroyed hangar. This is during the mission where we're putting out a fire. This water stream looks completely pasted in. This guy's from a different photograph entirely. I mean, look at the lighting on him. And the rest of it just kind of seems smudged. I mean, even this ladder seems like it was sort of drawn in the bottom half. None of this, and this guy just strolling around shirtlessly amidst burning wreckage. All this piled up sheet metal. Doesn't really look to scale. Here's soldiers leaving after the attack. They look rather jovial, considering we were just drawn unexpectedly into a war via surprise attack. That didn't really seem to match what we're told of this conflict, now does it? 4 days later, here we are, rebuilding. This one, does it look real to you? I mean, look at the background here. It's just like a different photograph. There's a clear delineation here, and even anything that obstructs this has a white line around it, which looks to me like just straight photoshopped. Like they just photoshopped these boats in, or it's two separate photographs. Like you have two transport ships, and then they just inserted this background in later. And this might seem very nitpicky, but this is supposed to be the proof of the war. I don't know if it's proof of anything. Some guys not being fired at, leading an amphibious assault, not really looking like they're ducking for cover. A tank on the edge of the universe. Now, clearly, you could have pictures like this, which look normal. All of the lighting matches, the blacks are the same, the grays are the same throughout the photograph, versus, say, this one, where this front tank in the foreground completely doesn't match this one in the background. There's absolute different lighting, and it looks like it's two different pictures. It looks like this front part is all cropped in to this later part. And of course, you have the ever-present, of course, it just had to be that number, just randomly. Here's a very staged photograph of some men comparing weapons in the jungle somehow, where this makes no sense. This background piece looks completely cut in. These guys are all smiles, and I'm not sure that's the regulation way to wear that helmet. Now, these might seem nitpicky, and they are, and I'm being overly critical, for sure. But this is supposed to be the proof, the definitive proof, and I just don't understand why we have so many of these fake little hammy shots of men inspecting weapons, posing with weapons. Does this prove a war? Not really. It just proves guys training, guys standing around, setting up weapons. Now, maybe it's not supposed to be, okay. But this was supposed to be the record of the war in Japan. Now, I understand that this doesn't disprove anything, but it's not on us to disprove anything. It is on them to prove that this stuff did happen. So if you look at this hypercritical eye, does this prove anything? Thus far, no. Here you have, which is supposedly an action shot. Not sure who's taking this picture, but there are no planes visible in this Japanese aerial attack. Smoke seemingly coming just from the water. Not sure why some of it's black and some of it's white. Not even sure what exactly I'm looking at. Allegedly, people evacuating a city, or like a village, I guess. There's like 30 of them. And then you have this one. This bomber is way too low. Perspective is way off. And these just look pasted into a regular photograph. And this here, I mean, this looks like the same plane, sort of copied and duplicated a few times. And this is supposed to be 300 planes, flying way too low for bombers, from my limited understanding of how things work. This piece of junk allegedly camouflaged by a palm frond. It's not even camouflaged when you're 10 feet away. And the various random islands in the Philippines and all the areas where we had battle. And this photograph, I'm not sure why the man over here is in such a different resolution than the guys over here. This is allegedly Japanese prisoners who wear loincloths to battle. Is it just me, or are these little white houses sort of painted in? This is a completely terrible green screen or paste up, whatever you want to call it. I mean, look at that thing. And who's taking this photograph? Again, here we have a boat that looks like it's just pasted in with some sort of smudges anywhere that you need to blur. Now, if you seem unimpressed, stick with me. This is just the beginning. This is just what piqued my curiosity. I mean, look at this one. This tower definitely doesn't belong here. The perspective's all wrong. Now, you might just say to yourself, these are just, this is like a PDF file and it's a low resolution. Yeah, you'd be right. This one, at least they admit this is reproduced from an illustration, which maybe explain why they're so cartoonish. This is allegedly part of tens of thousands of prisoners starving to death. No adequate facilities for caring for the wounded, which I see no wounded, just dudes writing letters home. home. Look more well-fed than I do. The ever-present ancient cannons buried here in this ancient fort, which I'm sure does a lot of good in the age of modern warfare. These are troops posed in the streets of Shanghai. At least they're admitting that it's fake. Happy, smiling lady troops arriving in Australia. So obviously this proves nothing. This isn't really a war by the pictures. Now this is telling you that the carrier burning after the Battle of the Coral. You look close and you can just see people just leaping overboard. And despite the ship apparently being in motion, you have guys that are on a rope ladder, apparently, descending down into a ship or a little rescue boat that's in front of the ship. I don't understand. And it's followed by this one right behind this, as if this is people being rescued from Coral Sea. And yeah, they definitely look like they just left a burning ship with these huge smiles on their face. This looks more like an exercise, like the soldiers are practicing rescuing people and they're laughing about it as you would during training or practice with the literally pasted on sailor hats. I mean, you jump off a burning ship and still have your floppy hat on? Not bloody likely. So this is what piqued my curiosity into thinking, like, something's fucky here. Why don't we have better photographs? Why do we have these crappy paste-up jobs allegedly showing things being attacked and burning? And that's not really how things burn, I don't think, with white plumes of vapor. I mean, I don't know what's going on here. This looks like a get blasted. What? And these guys show any sense of urgency wandering around, looking down here, the starfish, while, you know, the thing that we're on is on fire. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like there's something screwy here, where you get the usual guy looking on while the Dutch Harbor burns after this surprise attack on Dutch Harbor. A motor convoy in Australia, which, I don't know, one truck every half a mile, and you see 3 visible. I just don't understand what this proves. He's like, you say this won't hurt? I'm gonna hold you to that. If I feel so much as a pinprick, you get mollywopped. Don't take kindly being pricked with no needle, girl. Now, all of a sudden, what could you say about this? I don't know. You can't say anything. You can say troops being mobilized, troops hanging out, troops on weapons, and then some weird, like, pasted on ships in the background. I mean, and that's fine, but this is supposed to be the definitive proof of war. It doesn't look like anything. It looks like anything but this. I mean, look at this. Clearly an exercise. I mean, what are they shooting at? Each other? This guy's barefoot. You just can't tell me that this, and if I had to guess, I'd say this is just exercises. These are training, these are military exercises, and many times they even admit this. And these are just training drills, things like that. And that's fine. But that's not exactly the way that they're trying to tell us that it is, are they? In fact, this is supposed to be the war, Japan. Nah, maybe it's just me, but these guys' hats just look pasted on, including this guy's helmet. Look at the outline on this. What a terrible photograph. Supposedly guys comparing weapons. I mean, look at this guy back here, how pasted in he is. Why are we faking this stuff? I mean, I just don't understand. We have cameras. Why are we faking it? Look at this. Is supposedly a guy in camouflage, and it's just a head. Oh, this guy in quicksand? They just cut and pasted a head and act like he's camouflage? Like, what good is that? What good is being up to your chin, in like mud, do anybody? I call shenanigans. Now, this may not be enough to question entire conflict, okay, but this got my wheels spinning as to what really is going on here, coupled with some of my suspicions I had previously held about Japan's involvement in the war in the beginning. But certainly, perhaps this is just a flawed document. That's what you're thinking, and that's also what I thought. So I seeked out other sources. And to do this, I had to go back in time and look up some of the things. Like, where does the suspicion begin? Well, since this episode, we're just dealing with the photographs, I'd like to know what the era where photography began, or later. Let's talk about the Russo-Japanese War. This is the very turn of the century. It was a conflict that only lasted, we are told, 7 months or so. Fought between the Russian Empire and the Empire of Japan. And of course, we have the Russian expansionist policy conflicting with the Japanese expansionist policy and all the complications that ensued from those various motivations. And we are told that this is where Russia just got trounced, and this put Japan on the map as being a real contender. And we're told that going into this is the Russia with 1.4 million men total, Japan with 1.2, and Japan wins. However, we are told that of this, Russia lost 43 to 71 million, or thousand, which not sure why. So vague of a number, you would think. And Japan losing nearly twice that number at its lowest point, 80 to 100,000. So I'm not sure exactly how Russia got destroyed in a humiliating defeat. But regardless, we will ignore some of the narrative at this point, and we will look at what we are told is the photographic record of the Russo-Japanese War. Oh, good gollywalkers, this should be great. Finally, we'll get to the bottom of this. At what point did Japan get so terrible at photography? Well, apparently since the beginning. Despite this massive book, we get drawings of men. I mean, I don't think that's his actual head-to-shoulder ratio. Seems like it doesn't fit. And this is a worried Nicholas and the emperor who began the war. Okay, what do we got here? Typical street scene in Russia's capital. Okay. Typical street scene in Japan at the time. Why this guy's wearing his hat like that. Here we have recruits going through the drill without rifles, as you would do if you were preparing for war. And a bunch of very crappy photography. Again, heads look like they're pasted in. Guys that look like they're just kind of goofing around, like all 10 of them. This is soldiers learning how to carry wounded comrades. I mean, what do you need for this except for a couple of weird horses? I mean, what horse has a neck like this? This is so obviously pasted in. Look at the angles on this stuff. And why? This is 40 years after the Civil War. All the faces blurred, and you just looked at photographs from the 30s that were much clearer. This one's okay. This is a guy sitting around swapping stories. Yeah, I tell him, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Around a completely dead fire. I mean, again, we are just shown a bunch of crap. Ladies pasted into photographs. Those hats. The hell that is. A lot of standing around, building random stuff. Enlisted Tokyo troops, of course, waiting for their turn to be fitted out, including this woman and baby. Same 10 guys marching through the streets. And the show of force in Tokyo. 7 or 8 dudes loading onto the train. Unloading the transport carts, which looked to me just like a pile of wheels and rubble. So yet again, we're met with vast disappointment in these crappy photographs that are supposed to tell us a story. Here you go, studying plans. Yeah. Yes. I'm glad we picked this very private location where there's no babies or children around, or fear. It could be spies, you never know. What this guy's standing on is anyone's guess. I don't see a soldier in sight. And here we have Russian ships before the battle. And then here's one that's on fire. Note the 4 smokestacks in equal lines and the 2 masts. Then here's one allegedly at the moment of the explosion, which clearly isn't true. I mean, the thing is, whatever it was, is just a smoldering wreck at this point, or something at the moment of explosion. And then here you have the same ship, the top masts sunk there, that are no longer, not even the same size or in the same straight line, but yet this is what we're told. And here's the funnel. So yeah, clearly very shallow water here. I mean, so shallow that everyone's just sort of hanging out on the top of it, on the hull as it's laying there, wrecked. I don't know if it's just me, but these hats look rather pasted in, and some of the heads as well. And I don't know what a child is doing yet again, the ever-present baby that's just the night landing of the troops. Hope you don't mind, just bring your kid to work day. Saw Dunn Brett Jr. He's a little bored, what with being shot at and all that. Yeah, this one looks totally real. Let's talk about a natural pose and natural shadows. This is definitely 100% not a drawing with the head pasted on. No, sir. That is 100% real. Korean sentry? I mean, I know this guy 3 feet tall. None of this makes sense to me. And so it makes you wonder. This woman with a chef's hat on, apparently a Red Cross nurse, treating the Russian sailors. And we're actually told down here that Russia sent money to the Japanese Red Cross. Hey, thanks for taking care of our guys. This guy with the fake bandages on, possibly. And the rest of them just sort of wrapped up. I don't know what the hell's going on here. There's a jester with pajamas on. And all of this very odd. And all of this not making me feel very comfortable when I think about the role that Japan has to play on the world stage. These are scenes of sailors and returning home. Is this guy on his knees? What is this? I don't understand at all. So that's not going to do. The Library of Congress features such gems as this. Now, I don't know what's going on here. I really, truly don't. I'm baffled. Did we just paint a mustache on this guy and this guy? Or is one supposed to be better resolution? Despite the fact that it being the identical picture, but this man has a completely different expression on his face. And they have different facial hair. I feel like they're just in a way that someone is laughing at us. This is a bomb-proof burrow. Not sure what the hell he's got in his mouth. He's wearing his drawstring wrong. Well, this just looks like a horrible racist cartoon. And forgive me for not understanding military tactics, but this empty bottle of wine or two and a dirt cover doesn't make this bomb-proof. I mean, I don't know. This is like the bomb-proof tents that they showed us in the Civil War. Here's a guy casually looking into Port Arthur in complete disguise. Camp life of the Japanese soldier. Apparently there's two people in this camp. One's knitting socks and the other's just contemplating the universe. Here's plunder captured from the Russians. That wasn't bad. Does this look to you like it's to scale, or the way that you would stack captured plunder? I mean, what the hell is this? A soldier's barbershop next to just a giant pile of barbed wire and a photoshopped wagon? This is what we're told. This is the proof. This is 1905. And this is supposed to be the proof that this war happened. A peace offering bound for Port Arthur, huh? Guys, you shouldn't have. 2 bullets. Rickshaws for the wounded, looking more like taxi cabs waiting around for the plane to land to offer them a ride to the nearest hotel. Not very many wounded. And like I said, I'm not even touching the narrative. This is just the photographs. I'm pretty sure that guy's head, it does not belong to that body. Look at how sunken in that is. That is ridiculous. And this is your camp? It's the stone walls with like these wooden... I just feel like someone's just having a gas. Here you go, Japanese water guard protecting the camp supply. Wow, I'm sure. Now in this photograph, the second guy's not even visible over here. Where'd he go? Yeah, we thought better of it. This is the original, and then we pasted that guy in, or who knows? Why do they do this? I mean, I feel like they're just mocking us. This guy in Garden Jack. And this is your water supply for your whole camp? You guys are screwed. Bomb-proof dugout, huh? Gathering fuel in the Manchurian cornfields. Is that so? You could title this, Mongolian nomads preparing for the winter. Preparing their harvest, I mean, it would work. These have proved nothing. A convalescence letter home. Completely out of scale. Unless this guy's literally tiny. And I like the little painted in red cross here on this monk's burlap robe, just to imply that he's wounded. On his single hospital cot with this checkered, black and white checkered flag. None of this proves anything. This guy looks completely pasted in. It's entirely not to scale in this Chinese pawn shop where he's apparently going to, offer up his horse? Maybe one of the creepiest men I've ever seen photographed, if indeed that is a man, with his deathly pallor. So what is my point? My point is that I think this is another Pandora's box. Getting ready to fire an Osaka baby, huh? I mean, all you need is 5 guys. Look, I'm not saying this conflict didn't happen, but I'm saying these photographs are trash. That's basically all I'm saying. They're fake, doctored up photographs, and why would you fake something unless you had the real thing? Why? You could reproduce these photographs with 10 guys on a hillside with some blankets and some supplies later on pasted in. You fake a little armband here and there, you paste in a hat or two, crop a couple heads, do a little, I mean, this right here, this were clearly photographed in a different location and lighting and just inserted in. You can tell here, these photographs don't even match. There's nothing in this all. Oh, here, sending a message to the Tsar. What a message. Look at it, sir. Behold our smoke cloud off in the hills. I'm sure the Tsar got that loud and clear. Boiling drinking water for the camp. I don't understand how this works. I suppose these are cast iron vessels submerged in the ground. Okay. It's not a very big camp if that's the only water you got. Here's recreation in a Japanese army camp where they're all circling around bowing. How do you do? How do you do? How do you do? How do you do? It's like that dance that they do in Mary Poppins when they're walking around bowing at each other. Now the kicker is that surely by now we have color photography. I mean, maybe these are just bad publications. So let me just do a desperate Google search here and find color photography of Pearl Harbor. I mean, certainly there's got to be something better than that, right? Maybe these are just bad PDFs and the resolution's crap on my monitor and I'm just being a real jerk. Let's look at the first one that comes up. This has got to be good. Folks, I don't know if you're seeing what I'm seeing. I don't even know where to begin. Guys in sailor hats still in the water swimming with their hats on. Clearly fake American flag pasted in. Guys out of scale. Some swimming, some just standing on the shore while their vessel is burning. Dudes that are shirtless. The whole thing, floating bits over here that look just completely pasted in. Like this is like the worst. This is like entry level Photoshop stuff. I mean, look at these guys in this control panel, completely out of scale, who seem to be unaware while they're staring at their monitors that the entire thing is literally falling over. Not a plane in the sky. Here's a topless guy shooting at nothing. He apparently has no head. What in the actual bleep is going on? And how has this flown under my radar for so long? Like I said, this may be obvious to you. Yeah. Is this how you'd be casually standing about? Well, golly gee, looks like our ship's on fire. We done been bombed and torpedoed. Yeah, I'd say so. You guys look real panicked. This is entirely out of scale. Where the hell are they sailing to? On this little skiff, like towards the flaming... I mean, this is our proof that this stuff happened? Jaw-dropping photos, we're told. Yeah, I'll say jaw-dropping. Jaw-dropping in the absolute fakery. I especially like this one, with these completely out of scale Japanese Zeros, allegedly bombing guys who are in massive rowboats. This whole thing looks so bad. This rope cutting across. Who's taking this photograph? From where? These look pasted in. I mean, and maybe I'm doing a bad job of displaying this. And like I said, this is just the beginning because we are going to get into this pretty hard. But the whole thing's starting to be really suspicious to me. I feel like you don't need to do horrible fake photography if you have real photography. And this is their idea of proving to us that something did happen. I think they're failing. And this is just a cursory look, and I was hinting at some of this research. I wouldn't have put together such a patchwork job and thrown this up here, but I felt like I was teasing at something, and I just want to get something out there and get a conversation going and really look at it. And we're going to take a much deeper dive into this bit by bit. But I'll leave you with this little article that I came across as something to think about, and as just a way of opening your mind to the idea that there's something very suspicious about all this. And like I said, maybe I'm late to the table on this, but this is a good one here. And this is by a staff officer at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. That's the key right there, intelligence agency. And this is about an amphibious assault on a tiny island called Kiska, intending to seize the last enemy stronghold on North American soil. What we're told is that an armada of 100 Allied warships, 34,000 combat men. For 2 days, this invasion occurred. 300 casualties, but no Japanese casualties. Because why? Because the Japanese had abandoned the island 3 weeks prior. How could this have happened? Indeed. And they're going to go and wax on about perceptual bias and the psychology of intelligent analysis and presuppositions, and the whole thing written by an admitted intelligence agency just tells you what I think is really going on. That these attacks didn't happen, or they didn't happen the way they say they did. And in large, it was just a lot of noise and bluster and apparently friendly fire, because I don't know how 300 soldiers get killed if there's no one opposing you. And yes, that is in fact what we learned. Most of it was friendly fire. And it just makes you wonder, here's the entire fleet. Not one of these 100 ships of 34,000 men determined that no one was on the island, the tiny island that they were attacking. And if you buy that, well, I think you should reconsider. And I believe that this is a tongue-in-cheek telling us this operation basing on two key assumptions. The Japanese occupied it and they would not retreat. Well, that is what we're told, isn't it, about the Japanese, that they were at these places and that they would never surrender or never retreat. So are they telling us here, are we all operating on some perceptual bias and all of this was just military training against an invisible enemy? Perhaps an enemy that had been sort of paid off to stay silent about this stuff in exchange for, I don't know, given the primary treatment and the financial wherewithal to completely dominate the worlds of technology for the next 50, 70 years for the mere price of giving up your military and allowing United States to be based there and, I don't know, gain a strategic foothold, which kind of seems to be Commodore Perry's original goal 100 years prior to that, right? When he rolled into the harbor with black ships, demanding that they open up their ports to trade and forcing his way in at a place called Nagasaki. Kind of interesting, isn't it? And I know I'm hinting at events that we haven't covered here, but I just want to get the wheels spinning in your brains, if they haven't already, that there's something going on out here. And I am very suspicious. And I want to be clear, if the Japanese people have been duped by their government in a sort of a handshake deal with our government and told to evacuate cities so that we could burn them down and enforce the narrative, and in return, Japan would have a flourishing, bright future and the protection of the United States government and be admitted to the G7. I don't know, I'm just throwing things out there, Just throwing things out there. Because there's something weird going on out here in the Pacific. And I think that there's going to be a interesting and disappointing set of investigations henceforth. So thank you for joining me in this. Perhaps a little long-winded and perhaps a little directionless, but there we have it. We're going to kick open the door on this, and I'll be back with more soon.